Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here. Hope you're having a phenomenal day. Let's take another look here at the crypto market overview. More specifically, Bitcoin, how all these coins are performing versus Bitcoin. We got some outliers we're going to discuss here, but more specifically, some back-end liquidation data I think is super important, indicating further upside is more potential at this point as we retest our resistance range of 115,300. So it's an important one here to make sure to pay attention to. Let's go ahead and take a look. First and foremost, just to kind of preface here, if you didn't know, this significant sell-off yesterday was speculated that it was BlackRock selling their ETFs, or more importantly, selling their Ethereum and some Bitcoin. So big chunk of change there where the price action pulled back there based on them dumping for some reason. That didn't hold, and the price bounced off of a higher low, which is super important. So we'll discuss that here in a minute. If you're new to the channel, welcome aboard. Hope you can learn something today. Comment below if you get a chance. Let me know what your thoughts are here on either this analysis or the market in general. What do you think is going to happen next? Let's take a look at the crypto market overview here and discuss a couple of things here first and foremost. What we want to look at is, of course, the fear and greed index. We're looking at a 52 here. Anytime it kind of continues to dissipate and come lower, it's a very good sign, folks, because the lower it goes, the better things get in most cases. Now, obviously, this doesn't correlate directly with the price. This is more like a sentiment type of situation here. And the sentiment is people are going to start FOMOing into some long positions here soon, or trying to keep buying the dips as they come down lower. And as fear and greed index decreases and the price remains range bound, more likelihood of further upside. It's happened a lot in the past. So just know it's a pretty consistent cycle type of signal, kind of letting us know that altcoin season could be coming. I like to use that word loosely, of course, because I do really think that altcoin season moving forward is going to be a lot more diminished than it was in the past. Market makers are manipulating the market. They have control over things with ETFs. Ever since ETF approval, the market has gotten really weird. So in that sense, I do think we'll have some outliers running, but not all. As we can see here from altcoin season index, there's a lot of underperforming coins here. Okay, a lot of those ones we want to try to avoid and mainly focus on ones that are staying or doing better than Bitcoin. Majority of the coins that we cover here today are just really close to Bitcoin and or higher for profit. So either way you look at it, the whole point of me showing you altcoin season index is just a kind of a gauge of where we're at. This dropped from like the 42, 43 from yesterday, and it came all the way down, I think as low as like 33 this morning. It's starting to recover now, but the key takeaway is that altcoins took a pretty big hit yesterday, but a lot of them are consolidating nicely at their previous resistance, turn support. And those are the coins we want to focus on mostly, which majority of the coins we're covering here today are kind of falling into that category. Okay, so that's good stuff. Now let's go ahead and get started off with Bitcoin, kind of just a big picture back-end data here. This is the daily time frame. We can see we're in a bullish type of flag pattern. Obviously depends on how you draw it out, but for the most part, we are in a good position here overall. Keep in mind 112,000 is that previous high that was effectively retested as a new low here recently. So all the normal good stuff here is in place for the price action to go higher and to go, continue upwards in the 120 plus range. However, at this point, we can see top traders are shorting more than taking longs at this moment. So in the last 24 hours, we see more shorts active. Once more, those are active top traders, essentially. They're just high volume traders. And we look at bid-ask ratio, we're also seeing a lot more asks here recently, basically implying that people are trying to sell more so than buy. Now, does that mean you just take a short because everyone's trying to short? Not necessarily. If we take a look at liquidation short delta, we're starting to see some green here for a change. And this implies short squeeze is likely. In other words, the distinct probability of the price action, going further up is higher based on the fact that we're seeing just as many longs as we do shorts in the market right now. When you have that going into a key level resistance, oftentimes there are squeezes that occur where there's, where shorts have to close their position fast or quickly, and the price action goes higher because of that. When we take a look at open interest, so there's not a lot really here telling us that we are in like a position where the price action is going to go just straight up from here. It does imply we have a lot of support at 110 to 112, and I've kind of reaffirmed that in my videos already, just kind of reiterating the fact that that's a key level of support for us because that was a previous high range, and that should be our current low range. Okay, that's generally how that works. Previous highs should work as new lows. We zoom in a little here with liquidation. There's a chunk of liquidation at 115.5, upwards of 119. Okay, so heavy concentrations at roughly 117 and 119. So those are some good focal points, or maybe some good considerations for take profit. 117 makes sense because that's kind of within our descending trend line, just below our point of control of 117.8. And then 119 makes sense as well. It's right there in our golden pocket, our key fib level, which is effectively a local high as well. So those are all good areas to consider taking profits if you're considering a long. We have a long position open at 112,950. That's our average entry. We also have a long open with XRP, which is effectively break even, and a Dogecoin that's just a little bit in profit there. So I'm leaning more towards the prices going up than down. I'm trying not to get too heavy and stack too many longs, but the key takeaway here is that there's a good chance we're going to see a continuation. And let me explain that here. First of all, let's look at the daily time frame and kind of just get some perspective here, and just note that we are above the 50-day SMA. Until we lose that, I'm not super concerned we're going down. Once more, we also have our previous high here that was retested as a new low. So keep in mind, we could still continue to retest that, but we gotta presume that 112,000 is going to work as a support moving forward until it doesn't. That's how support levels work. But once more, previous all-time highs are typically retested as a new low before the price takes off. So I'm not just proposing we're going to go straight up from here. I think that's unlikely, but I do think at some point we're going to see the price continue higher after a bit of manipulation, right? Which is kind of standard stuff now. If you haven't gotten used to it, you better get used to it quick. Okay, let's talk about this here. We got our previous low in a way as a new high. A 4-hour time frame will reflect this a little bit better, but on the daily, just to clarify, so you understand, 115,300. We've seen 3 days of attempts to break that, and it still is yet to do so. So keep in mind, I don't think we're breaking mildly bullish until we break 115,300. That's kind of that point of contention for right now. So hypothetically, we should be considering the price going lower based on the direction of this trend here. Okay, so that's kind of we should presume the price will go lower until it breaks this range. But as you can see here, we're retesting our RSI, coming up to that moving average, stochastic swinging up. We're bouncing effectively off 20 on the money flow index. I talked about that previously and how well an overextended MFI will typically give an early indication of a reversal. So while this hasn't fully come to fruition yet, I do think that we're in the makings here with some slightly larger probabilities of going higher than lower. Okay? And that's really all this is, folks. This is just a statistical probabilities is what we're looking at. We're right here. There's a lot of confluence here with resistance at 115,300. We've got 2 moving averages above the price action. So we're going to need to see another high volume candle to be able to get the price to punch through this. And if so, we should be looking for a bullish back test of 115,300. I'm mostly looking for a closure today on the daily of 115.3 or higher. That's mostly what I'm looking for. And I like to use 24-hour period confirmation because it helps give you, perspective on who controlled that price action in that time frame. Because if you use like a 15-minute confirmation, what does that do for you? That doesn't do too much because it doesn't really show big picture. In other words, so far, so good. If we close above this, we'll have a bullish engulfing candle and a likelihood of further upside. So that's what I'm looking for there on Bitcoin. Let's go ahead and move on to Ethereum, kind of see where we're at here. Ethereum's performing very well. It's one of the few coins that's actually outperforming the majority of the alts here that we're covering today. In other words, if you take a look here, we got Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, SUI, and XRP in order. ETH is this guy right here, and this is the only coin to have bullishly backtested its resistance level as a new support. So 3,600 roughly is that effective support level for us. We can also see a bullish type of pennant pattern here. That's a very terrible illustration, sorry, but you can kind of see we're working into a bit of a compressed type of ascending channel. So those are generally favorable. Either way you look at it, you compare this with majority of other altcoins outside of Solana retesting that range, SUI, XRP, and somewhat of Solana, mostly Bitcoin. They're all having trouble breaking their resistance. Okay, these are just key level resistances to give you some perspective. All right, so let's look at the backend data, see what's going on with our altcoins here today, and go from there. So when it comes to the backend liquidation data, this is not like a foolproof plan. It just kind of helps us understand, better perspective of things that the charts don't tell you. In other words, open interest. This tells us the most amount of interest, exactly very descriptive in the positions that you see the heavy concentration. So these yellow bars here are essentially telling us that we've got a lot of volume at 35.60 and once more at 36.40. So that's a nice solid support range. As you can see, the price action is kind of hung out in that area and has continued higher. Granted, If Bitcoin was going down right now, I think we'd probably have lost that. But the truth is, people are very interested in that level. Those are our areas of support below the price action. We can also recognize liquidation long delta is now at about 2 billion. This is good. It basically implies we're seeing sustainability in this price point and that Ethereum is more bullish than bearish. Overall here as well, we can see 3740 upwards of 3900, rough estimate 37 to 3900, including 4000 is a heavy concentration of liquidation above the price. And I mentioned this in my Twitter post too here as well, where I really do feel that we're going to see further upside for Ethereum. It's the only coin to retest its resistance as a new low, which we've already covered. And more importantly, it's outperforming versus Bitcoin. So I do think ETH is probably one of the more likely performing coins here moving forward here soon. All that being said, what I'm getting at is now that we've broken our resistance and tested that as a support, the likelihood of further upside is higher to sweep this $3,700 to $4,000 range. When we look at the charts here quickly, this isn't like a super bullish situation. I mean, the overall sentiment for this coin is bullish, right? Most coins are looking pretty bearish on the daily time frame, or at least shifting bearish, where ETH is still maintaining a bullish structure. So I really think that we continue to maintain this range here, 3,600 or higher. The likelihood of further upside is greater. Furthermore, too, in the 4-hour time frame, we're starting to see we're above all moving averages and our point of control here. If you zoom out and kind of look at the last 3 weeks worth of data, we're right there in that range of a ton of support here based on volume. And if you know anything about my channel or anything about me as a trader, volume is probably the biggest, most important thing you could identify. It's not these magical fib levels that have Elliott wave theories attached to them. It's volume and consistency where people feel the most amount of support and resistance, right? A lot of it's mentality, because sentiment here, coins are very emotional if you think about it, or people are who trade them, and oftentimes they have this mentality of a good value versus bad, and always understanding how they are valuing the coin itself that you're trading is important. Right now, people feel like ETH is undervalued, it's going to go higher, and the likelihood of higher upside is greater because people keep averaging in between 3,600 and 3,650. Okay, so that is ETH. Let's move on to the next guy here, Solana. All right, so taking a look at Solana, we can recognize 168 is that point of control. We're right there at that level, testing that resistance. Until we break through it, I would exercise caution. However, when you look here, liquidation short delta is now bullish, so we've shifted that momentum. We're about 500 million in the long, basically implying we have 500 million more longs than shorts as far as value is concerned. And when we look here, there's a chunk of liquidation between 172 to 175. So if you're going to take a long as a breakout trader, consider taking profits in that 172 to 175 range. When we look at the front end data here, we can see on the daily time frame that we're maintaining above the 50 and the 50 and the 200-day SMA, still below the 20. The key takeaway here is we haven't broken our descending trend yet. While this is not the cleanest descending trend, the truth is we haven't established higher highs and higher lows yet. So until we break through this resistance level, the best practice is to wait until that is retested. So what I generally like to recommend in situations like this is for the price action, wait for it to kind of consolidate and hang out in this range. At that point, that's when you want to consider a long. A lot of it hinges on Bitcoin too. Bitcoin pulls back, different story altogether, right? We could very well go down lower, but the key here is that we have got a good amount of support at 155 to 160, but a solid amount of resistance at 160 to that 170 range. So I don't particularly love trading coins that are stuck in these little tight ranges. Until we have an official breakout, it makes no sense to consider trading. And once more, I go with statistical probabilities, and the odds right now are they're mostly break even, and that's not a strong return on investment. Okay, so that's kind of the consensus there for now for Solana, even though if you compare at a glance here, Solana is performing better than SUI and XRP in regard to the most recent 24 to 48 hours of price action. Taking a look here at SUI, let's go ahead and double check a few things. Now, I'm not bearish in this coin. I'm not like a F SUI kind of guy, even though that's our mantra in our community. I still, though, feel until we get above 363, this range of 355 to 360 is going to provide a lot of resistance for us. There's just too much confluence there in that area. Let's see if there's anything that's changed on the back end and just double check. Once more, open interest is not really accumulating heavy to the downside, implying we don't have a strong base of volume. You got to recognize too, this is one of the few coins that has a strong amount of liquidation short delta remaining high. It's pretty consistent here. So this is like a heavily shorted coin right now. And I can see why. If you look at this super massive amount of liquidation, we can see 325 to 280 is that range, more specifically 3 to 320. So me personally, I would much rather wait for that opportunity than taking a long right now that's high risk. That's just me personally, though. I know a lot of folks will probably differ in that opinion, but I like to limit my risk, and for the most part, I don't like to send out signals in coins like this just because it's a popular coin. It hasn't broken its descending trend line, hasn't retested its recent high as a new low. It's still below its point of control. There's a lot of reasons why it's not safe to consider a long position just yet. Either way, if you do end up taking a long and you get lucky, the price action here, we look, $4 is that heavy resistance based on volume. So a lot of folks are stuck in a $4 position, if you will. So there's going to be exit liquidity there. Therefore, if you're going to consider taking profits, it's anywhere between now and then would be a good call. Okay, so make sure you do that. And don't be a SUI to the moon kind of person, unless it's a spot bag, it's a different story. But taking a high leverage long position on a coin like this to the metaphorical moon is a very bad idea. Okay. That's me putting it nicely. There's a lot of other words I'd better use to describe that. But once again, just don't be an emotional idiot. That's a simple way to understand it. All right, so let's take a look here. The last but not least is XRP. XRPizzle, if you want. Let's go ahead and take a look. Back-end data lets us know here that 293 is that solid amount of open interest. Okay, so it really just implies that it's a heavily guarded position or location. I mentioned that yesterday. I've mentioned it majority of the week. But as we see here, it was heavily guarded again. The price pulled back to 290 and bounced quite solidly there off that high amount of volume. Speaking of volume, we can see where you can't see it on the charts, but on my playout chart you will. There's a little blip of green here, basically implying we're at break even, potentially shifting that momentum. Looking at the last 7 days of liquidation, chunk between 310 and 325, maybe 330. But for the most part, majority of the local liquidation has been swept. There's a little bit left at 290 to 285. These are late longs here, of course. All right. So let's look at the charts, kind of see where we're at. We have a bullish back to this descending trend. So when the price action breaks through a trend, comes back to retest it, it's oftentimes where you want to try to get in. So obviously hindsight's 2020, but an entry around 290 would have been a good call. Of course, a lot of that hinges on Bitcoin, and generally speaking, I don't love taking kind of trades like that until we get a confirmational break above a resistance, and Bitcoin still has yet to do that. So please exercise caution if you're going to take a long with this coin. I have a long with this coin open with our community just because I feel like it's one of those coins that should continue to progress higher. This $2.93 to $3 range is a significant amount of volume flowing in at this point. We can see that right here reflected on the chart. We're over the 50-day SMA as well, maintaining above 50 in the RSI. There's a lot of good macro considerations here. I mean, it's like if we were to look at the larger time frame, there's like a 70% probability we go higher. Once more, we're just building a case here to see if it's worth taking a long or a short. You should honestly always be trying to convince yourself not to take a trade when you do this, though. That's the whole concept. But at this point here, majority of these confirming factors here letting us know that this 290 to basically $3, that's a heavy support range based on confluence. We got multiple confirming factors right here at this range. So, outside of the fib level, we've got mostly confirming factors squeezing out in this range here. So we're probably due to see a type of breakout, either up or down soon. That's really what it boils down to. When you get all your indicators starting to compress, like a Bollinger Bands, for example, it leads to breakout, and typically you break to the upside because we derive from the downside, right? We got a short-term, bullish type of flag pattern here. It really depends on how you look at it. That's the thing about charts, though, or more so importantly, patterns. You can convince yourself that patterns exist even when they don't, right? The key takeaway is that we've broken above our descending trend. We've maintained above our point of control. We have a lot of volume below the price action. Here locally, of course, there is volume above, so you got to recognize there's some resistance at 310 to 320. So if you're going to take a long, consider a tight take profit target, right? Try not to be, again, one of those folks or those XRP idiots. I have no problems talking about that. Show stupid posts of like, XRP to 10,000. Like, come on, people. You really think we're going to have like a $100 trillion market cap on this coin? Anyways, the whole point of me mentioning this is that if you're going to trade responsibly and try not to be one of those persons that just takes a trade and doesn't have a stop loss and just lets it ride to where you hope it's going to be someday. It's a different story with a spot bag, but when it comes to leverage, you have to treat it responsibly, treat it like a business. You'll get those kind of results. All right. At least a good business has good values and good consideration for risk tolerance, which is what I do. So if you want to become a better trader, CryptoCash.tech is a site, link down below. We did take some nice profits here recently on our, what was it? It was our Litecoin trade there. That was a solid little launcher there. But we do have an average position with Dogecoin and XRP and now Crowcoin too. So I'll be sure to cover all that here later. But I thank you again so much for being an amazing part of my life. Make sure, of course, too, as well, you check out this new Bitnix deposit reward bonus. They have an awesome reward bonus here, as well as a futures bonus for first time trading reward. So if you're a new trader, check them out as well. No KYC or VPN. They've been awesome to us as a community. So I like to pay it forward there. Hope you all have a good rest of your day. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.